from sea to shining sea. There are over 2.2 billion acres of land across America, filled with amber waves of grain, purple mountains, and wide open blue skies. America possesses some of the most unique and diverse groups of geographies and climates found in the world. With so much land and diversity within our borders, have you ever wondered who owns the most land within America? Stick around and find out. The U.S. federal government has been the largest public landowner throughout America's history, owning as much as 1.93 billion acres of land at the height of the Western expansion. According to the Congressional Research Service's Federal Land Ownership Report from 2020, it is still the nation's largest landowner today, owning 640 million acres. That's about 28% of all land across the United States. But who is the largest landowner in America, and how much does he or she own? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. First, I think a little history lesson is important to understand and answer two important questions. One, why did the federal government give away most of the land it once owned? And two, why is land ownership such an important part of American society? During the mid to late 1800s, Congress enacted many laws to encourage and accelerate the settlement of the West by disposing federal lands. Two key examples include the Homestead Act of 1862 and the Desert Lands Entry Act of 1877. The Homestead Act of 1862, for example, granted adult heads of families, freed slaves and immigrants, 160 acres of public land essentially for free if they lived on that land for 5 consecutive years and abided by a few other conditions. Between 1781 and today, approximately 1.2 billion acres of public land was transferred out of federal ownership. The total includes transfers of 116 million acres to individuals and businesses, 328 million acres to states, and 143 million acres in Alaska under state and native selection laws. However, it's worth noting 97% of transfers to private individuals occurred before 1940. Homestead entries, for example, peaked in 1910 at 18.3 million acres, but dropped below 200,000 acres annually after 1935, until being fully eliminated in 1986. You might be asking, why was the federal government so interested in encouraging settlements in the West? Well, just before the start of the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln believed and said in a speech that the government's purpose was to elevate the condition of men, to lift artificial burdens from all shoulders, and to give everyone an unfettered start and a fair chance in the race of life. He followed that idea with the passage of the Homestead Act. Later that year, during another speech he made in Ohio in February 1861, Lincoln said the Homestead Act was worthy of consideration and that the wild lands of the country should be distributed so that every man should have the means and opportunity of benefiting his condition. You see, Lincoln knew that land ownership was a foundational asset in elevating the economic prosperity of men. Land is the basis to which all goods and services originate from. It's a commodity-based asset that you can't make any more of, and a good hedge against the devaluation of currency. Land has made families wealthy and politically influential since the dawn of time. During America's early years, only landowners had the right to vote and decide who governed the country. That type of economic power had a strong influence on the decisions our government would make and dictated laws that would further enrich the wealthy as it evolved over its 243-year history. These days, when there is uncertainty in the financial markets or in Washington, D.C., more and more investors look at land as a safe place to invest their money. It's no wonder all of the people who own most of the land in the U.S. rank among the wealthiest Americans. So who do you think is the largest private landowner in America? Some might think it's Donald Trump, but he isn't. He doesn't even crack the top 100. When I was growing up, Ted Turner was the largest landowner in America. The media mogul behind the creation of CNN, the first 24-hour cable news channel, and the TBS cable channel. Ted Turner owns over 2 million acres and uses some of his lands to raise bison meat, amassing the largest herd in the world, which he just happens to use for his Ted Montana Grill, a chain you might have eaten at before. Oh, and he was also the former owner of the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta Hawks. But in 2011, Ted Turner was no longer the largest landowner in America, when over 1 million acres of land was purchased in Maine and New Hampshire by one man. So who surpassed Ted to claim the #1 spot? The answer is John Malone. Now, there aren't any public pictures available of him online that I could use without paying a fortune. So if you want to know what he looks like, go ahead and look him up. John Malone owns over 2.1 million acres of land in America. That's the equivalent of 1,590,909 football fields, or 3,281 square miles. That's more land than the state of Rhode Island and Delaware. While Ted Turner amasses 2 million acres of land gradually since the 1970s, Malone bought roughly 1.3 million in 2 years between 2010 and 2011. Outside the US, John also owns multiple high-profile hotels and castles in Ireland. He is worth an estimated $6.6 billion at the time this video was made. So, who is John Malone and how did he get so rich? John Carl Malone was born on March 7, 1941 in Milford, Connecticut. A graduate of Yale and Johns Hopkins Universities, he holds a doctorate in operations research. In 1973, after stints working with the prestigious consulting firm McKinsey & Company and General Instruments, where he ran a subsidiary which produced mini computers for the cable industry, he was offered the CEO position at a small cable company called TCI in order to save it from going out of business. By 1990, Malone had successfully grown TCI into the largest cable company in America. In 1998, AT&T acquired TCI for $32 billion. That's over $49 billion in today's dollars. Liberty Media, a TCI subsidiary at the time, remained a separate publicly traded company that John Malone ran and is still the chairman to this very day. During his tenure at Liberty Media, Malone acquired the Discovery Channel, Virgin Media, QVC, Lionsgate, Starz, Game Show Network, HGTV, the Travel Channel, the Food Network, the Atlanta Braves, and Formula One racing. John Malone once said that he earned so much that money just didn't interest him. It was the love of the game that drove him. From an interview with the Irish Times from 2015, John described his weakness for land as a virus he caught from Ted Turner. Nicknamed the Cable Cowboy, John said he buys land because, reprising the Mark Twain adage, they aren't making it anymore. But it's mostly because he loves being out on the land on horseback, and the conservation of land for future generations is very important to him. Thanks for watching this episode of Profiles. If you like this video, please hit those like, subscribe, and notification buttons. I'll be uploading more content in this series in which I examine how real estate tycoons, media moguls, and other notable investors navigated the business climate of their time to become the kingpins of their generation.